Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Leadership Lab podcast. My name is Dina Phillips, and I'll be your host. I'm excited to be joined again today by Jesse McCullough and Sean Bjorndal, two pharmacists and leadership experts with a passion for helping pharmacists become better leaders. Jesse, Sean, how are you guys doing today?
I'm doing good, but it's not good around me. I'm going to tell you what, it's really dreary, but I tell you what, I think there's a lot to be optimistic about today, even when the environment around us may be a bit challenging.
Nothing to add other than I wrecked my sunglasses yesterday when I was unloading from a camping trip. My optometrist told me to go to this one random repairman. It cost me $5 to fix them. They're brand new, so I'm really excited today.
Nice. So I thought that story was going to go a different direction there. That's great news. All right. Well, today we're going to be talking about the law of compensation and philosophies related to it from the lens of pharmacy leadership. I think we'll find that this law has a wide range of applications, both in the practice of pharmacy and also just in general areas of our lives, like our side hustles and community nonprofits and things that we may be involved in. So that's where we want to go today. So Jess, why don't we pretend like I'm your target audience, knowing very little to nothing about the law of compensation. So why don't we start there with defining it?
Yeah, Dina, just before he goes, I am your target audience, Jesse, because I have no idea where this is going today.
Okay,
so
I'll tell you, I had no idea about this until I was about 40 years old. Right now, I had done some level of study of economics, and I knew about supply and demand, and when there's scarcity in the workforce, then wages are impacted in a positive way for the workers. I knew these things, but it wasn't until I got into my 40s where I was introduced to this idea of the law of compensation. Now, just as a bit of context and call back, over the last couple of episodes, we've talked about the importance of knowing the law and then obeying the law. And last time we got together, Dina and I looked at the law of cause and effect, and how that's such an important law for us to understand, and also to be on, to do the things that we can do to be on the cause side of the law of cause and effect. So when I was introduced to this idea of the law of compensation, this is an idea that was put forth by Ralph Waldo Emerson. And he said that the law of compensation is built on three things. And those three things are, number one, the need for what you do, right? So that's sort of the demand side of the equation. So the need for what you do. Number two, what's necessary is your ability to solve that problem, your ability to meet that need. So that's part of the supply. But then the third part, and I thought this was an interesting piece that at least I hadn't really given a whole lot of consideration to up until it was introduced to me. But the number three was the difficulty there is to replace you. So it's the need for what you do, your ability to solve that, and then the difficulty to replace you. And I found that being able to look at things through that idea, through that law, through that concept, has been so helpful. So I'm probably going to ruffle some feathers with this. Full disclosure, I come from a family that was in education, but I would tell you this, and it's that education mass produces average. It mass produces average. When you think of it, there's a lot of people who get real proud of where they, perhaps where they went to school, with, some of the things that they've done, the name on a diploma, whatever it turns out to be. But you meet enough of those folks and you're going to find out that they're all about the same. They become pretty average. I've done some different work over the years where I've worked with, large numbers of students and met, large numbers of pharmacists, and, you meet enough of them and they all sort of blur together. They all turn out to be average. And what that means is when we're all average, it means that we become very easy to be replaced. Right? There's not a lot of variability in the marketplace. So, by understanding this idea of the law of compensation and the different components that apply to it, it actually gives us a formula for how we can be causative within the law of compensation. So I'm going to pause here, Dina, Sean, just to see if you have any thoughts or reactions to these elements of the law of compensation.
Dina, do you have anything yet? Go ahead if you do.
The only thing that I'm doing is I'm kind of mulling over in my head that anytime there's like just laws of the universe or Murphy's laws or like whatever you want to call them. Last time when we spoke about the law of cause and effect, I found it very encouraging and it did a lot for my confidence because it's like impossible to fail if you know the law and obey the law. It's like you put in the equations and the variables over here and just by law of the universe, you're going to get, better outcomes. And so I'm excited to see where this one's going because, yeah.
I want to pick up where you talked about education. I thought let's dive in there because I think this is very relevant to what we're trying to do, how we're trying to help our colleagues to not just be educated, to like take that education. What did you say to me last week, Jess? It was something plus something equals transformation.
Information plus application equals transformation.
Yeah, awesome. And I love that because, on my journey in the last 5 years, it's been the school of hard knocks, but it's been growth through the struggles, right? And I think back to when I was in education, like when I was going to pharmacy school, going through all of these things. It didn't teach me the skills to come out and be successful. It taught me the skills to go out and get a job, and that's it. Like get a job, and that was my life forever, was getting a job and then maybe try to climb a corporate ladder. But it wasn't like the leadership stuff or outside the box thinking that we need to develop ourselves to get to other levels. Because guess what? C equals Pharm D, right? I wasn't a great student. I did not have any tassels, additional tassels on my gown when I graduated.
Nor did I, my friend.
Yeah. So anyways, that was I kind of wanted to highlight that. I don't know where we were going past that, but I'm glad you said it. Because our colleagues have a problem with this, right? And they are starting to go more and get more education. They're going to go get more education, but then it's like, how are you going to apply that education? What are you going to do with that? And you're not going to really truly learn until you get in it.
Right. There's a lot there to unpack, Sean. Yeah. Absolutely, because there is sort of a minimum level that we get out there with, right? And we get out there and we hack it. And some people don't have this idea. And it took me a long time to come along for this idea to take root with me of I need to do something different. And it's not just saying yes to the different opportunities that come up. I mean, that was part of my strategy, that opportunity comes up, say yes. Opportunity comes up, say yes. But if you want to get really good at any of these things that you're doing, you know what you have to do? You've got to apply and develop and really build up that skill set. And I didn't realize it at the time, but when you look at it through the lens of the law of compensation, what am I doing? I'm increasing my ability to solve problems, and I'm making myself more difficult to replace. Right. Those are a couple of things. And, I'm going to tell you right now, pharmacists who just do the minimum CE requirement, they're not doing a whole lot to make themselves difficult to replace. Now, I would also just ask that when we look at this, flip it around. Look at, from the position of a payer, right? And that, or a customer or a patient, whoever might be giving your organization money, what are they looking at? They're looking at, well, what's the need? What's your ability to do it? And is there somebody else that could replace you? And, and that's that. And by understanding those elements, I think there's the opportunity to be so empowered. I think there's the opportunity to be so empowered that you can do things to wiggle with this equation to make yourself more valuable to the marketplace, more impactful to the marketplace, and really be able to do things that set the course for a better future for you and your team and your families.
All right, Jess, I'm going to pause you right there. Can you remind us what that equation is again, just for our listeners and probably actually more for myself.
Well, that's it's good. Repetition is the mother of skill here, right? So we need to review these things. But the equation that Emerson puts forth in the law of compensation is the need for what you do. That's the demand, right? But that gets balanced against your ability to solve the problem and the difficulty to replace. Supply aspect of it is that you're balancing those two pieces against one another.
Okay.
So along those lines then, Jess, I know my ears perk up both in an excited manner and also in a fearful way when I hear the word compensation. Anytime it's dealing with with me being a pharmacist and stuff. So how does this law, like, more specifically apply and relate to pharmacists being fairly compensated from a salary perspective, but also in fighting for fair compensation when it comes to our businesses and our pharmacies with, third-party payers and such?
Mm-hmm. Right. That's an excellent question. And I think that the law gives us a good lens to look through that with, right? Because it's really about what is your ability to solve problems, right? What's the ability to solve problems? What are the problems that patients have? And the problems that they have is they have conditions that need to be treated or controlled or managed through the appropriate use of medications. And it goes a step beyond simply just dispensing. Right. It goes on to say that you're dispensing, but you're getting a result. You're getting that positive result. Dina, you work in the anti-coag clinic, right? So what's the problem that you solve is you're trying to have patients be therapeutic with their INR or I'm not the anti-coag pharmacist here, so correct me on any of this. But you're looking to keep the patient therapeutic. Why? So that they don't have a heart attack or a stroke.
Yeah, that's pretty much all there is to it.
Right. I mean, it's pretty straightforward. But if all you're doing is dispensing, but you're not monitoring, if you're not making sure that you're getting that positive result, then that you sort of undermine yourself.
Right.
Jess.
Yes, sir.
Getting back to my sunglasses.
Okay.
This is very relevant, actually. I'm glad that happened. Well, I'm not glad that happened, but I wasn't happy when it happened. Let's say that. This guy, like, I walked in there, like, a new pair of glasses because they're prescription. I can't see without them, right? And it's the gift of eyesight. The first time I got them, I was like, whoa, this is what the palm trees look like when you're outside in the sun and you can actually see them from far away. Love it. But so they're expensive. And I'm like, I was crushed because I'm like, okay, $5 to fix these frames. Actually, these frames right here, perfect. Like, they look brand new. And I walk out there with $5. This guy does not know the law of compensation. But I would have paid a lot more.
Could
$20,
they,
$30,
could they
$40
fixed?
is much cheaper than what it would have cost me to get a new pair of glasses. And I just feel bad for this guy. And I'm like, what can I do for this guy now? Because I don't know. But pharmacists, I think, are in that same boat. Right, they are in that same boat in a lot of circumstances where they don't know what they're worth.
Well, that's part of it. Because what you're describing here is the need for the problem that needs to be solved. Right, you had a problem. You had prescription sunglasses. They're broken. Right, you go to a guy. This guy has the ability to solve it.
Yeah,
and solve it well. And he did. Right now, I don't know how long it took him to do it. It may have just taken
5 minutes. I was in and out in 5 minutes. Nuts.
Okay, so
yeah,
it took him a small amount of time, but I'm going to suggest to you that through the context of this law, you could have taken that to a number of different eyeglass specialists.
Never heard. Okay, keep going. Sorry.
And you could have taken to a number of different eyeglass specialists and had a very similar experience. So I'll just tell you now. I'm supposed to wear corrective lenses. But whenever I first got my glasses as a teenager, I remember my mother put her purse down on top of the glasses and bent the frame and the lens popped out. And I remember taking that into the local eyeglass place, and I said, "Hey, my glasses are mangled here." And similar to you, within a very short amount of time, they had whipped those things back into shape. Right. So there's part of it. Now, I don't mean to belittle what this person did for you, Sean, but I also just ask that you keep an eye open to that aspect of it, the difficulty to be
Yeah.
replaced. And I think that's something that as pharmacists, and I'll go back to this. Oftentimes we can have an elevated opinion of ourselves, but we can also be in a bit of a vacuum. Right? We can say, hey, nobody provides better care than me. I look at the three people on this screen. I am the worst of the three of us to provide care. I have no doubt of that in my mind, that if it comes down to replacing me, either one of you would replace me and some on the other side of that. But when you understand that piece is at play, when you're ignorant of that piece at play, of the ability for you to be replaced, it warps your sense of reality. Nobody else does what I can. And I think we'll talk about this, before we're done here today, because this is becoming the reality, at least across community pharmacies all across the country. As community pharmacies continue to contract, the difficulty to replace, that's becoming more and more challenging.
Yeah. So along those lines, and actually this question would be great for both of you. I had always had this notion, just in the places where I practiced and where, the things that I saw happening every day. My idea of the pinnacle of pharmacy was to be like just an outstanding, stellar clinician. We're at rounds, I've got the answer. We're doing this, I've got the answer. People consult me all day long for clinical questions, and man, can I come up with some therapeutic plans for those patients. And I was in awe of the people around me who, I might have to study for the topic to kind of get all the nuances and everything back around with it. They seem to remember things they studied in pharmacy school 15 years ago in one chapter of acid-base disorders. And I'm like, who are you? What are you, nobody knows that now. You and the guy who wrote that book, that's it. Those are the only people that know that. And so I just, that's kind of where I would focus my efforts and everything. But honestly, it didn't take me long to realize that good clinicians and really smart pharmacists that can come up with some excellent therapeutic plans, like you said, not to belittle it, but they did seem to be a dime a dozen. I mean, you could walk down the street and that pharmacist was just as good or better than I was. And here I thought I was really super great at providing some therapeutic plans and things for patients. So along those lines, though, what advice would both of you give to some of our pharmacist colleagues who may now find themselves very unexpectedly in the job hunt, out there competing for jobs? And also, what are some things to watch out for? What are some landmines that we might want to give a nod to?
I guess the first thing that comes to mind for me, Dina, is this. The law of compensation says you need to be able to solve problems. And I want to encourage our listeners to be thinking about that. I can't even begin to give you a number of how many text messages or messages on LinkedIn or phone calls, emails. They're going back and forth with all sorts of folks now who are being impacted by some of these things happening in the marketplace. And one of the questions that I like to ask them is this, and it's what problems are you really good at solving? Right? That's, because I think that gives you a clue as far as where you need to be and, the value that you bring to the marketplace. And it goes beyond just being able to fill a prescription in a reasonable amount of time, right? I think that it goes into really being able to deliver solutions that the patient and at the broader scale that the marketplace wants. that's what I would point people to. From my vantage point, it took me the better part of 20 years to figure this out. But it's the ability to lead people well is the answer that I would give anybody. The pitfall that I would warn people against is that it's extra credentials at the end of your name. Now, for some, it may be. But I would also, just say, be careful of, oh, I want to very much specialize or seek something that won't have a very dedicated application. So, Dina, I'm going to use you as an example as I try to unpack this. You've specialized in anticoagulation therapy. That's great. If you're going to do that, I would certainly hope that you would put yourself in an environment where you would use that a lot of the time, and not that you would use it on an occasional basis, right? I would tell you this when I was developing clinical programs. One of the things that community pharmacies always talked about was, hey, we want to take care of our diabetic patients, because we knew if we took care of the diabetic patient, then we're also going to get the rest of the family. We knew that the diabetic patient was going to bring in some amount of revenue, both in the pharmacy and at the front end. We had some formulas, and I'm sure those formulas have changed over time. But when it comes down to it, what percentage of the patients that you serve, what percentage of those patients are diabetic? And if it's not like 3/4 or higher, you may be putting a lot of effort into something that's not going to give you a whole lot of return. Now, I see you nodding your heads, but I want to make sure that is that resonated with you? I could say, oh, I love asthma. That sounds awful when I say it that way, but I'm fascinated by asthma. And I want to be able to serve asthmatic patients. But if that's the path that I go down, but I don't put myself in an environment where that's the primary population that I'm serving, I don't know that I'm really increasing my value in the right way.
So with the closure of so many community pharmacies that we're likely to see here coming in the very near future, I wanted to kind of talk about the influx of patients into neighboring pharmacies, and we kind of touched on that a little bit earlier, just kind of defining problem solving about what to do and things like that. But it does seem that this could be a really good example of both a blessing and a curse. And so I just kind of wanted to get your thoughts on how do we handle this in a really good way for patients and providers?
Whenever a pharmacy closes, it's not a good scenario, right? Like, the pharmacy's not happy about it. The patients aren't happy about it. It is possible that the pharmacy acquiring that business is optimistic about it, but that may not always be that way. Sean, you have something.
Can I jump in here? Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm gonna say a lot of times less than optimistic, right? Kind of all of a sudden, because you're getting an influx of patients and workload, but you're not getting any more workforce behind that, right? I mean, this is back in 2011. Yeah, I was pick at a Walgreens, purchased the prescriptions for a pharmacy that closed. And it was a lot of work. It wasn't your normal, like, drop a refill in, let's fill it. Like, it was a lot of work, no extra help. They were not happy to go to Walgreens because they love their independent pharmacy. They did not want to see me, right? So anyway, sorry, I don't know if that helps, but yeah, most I'm less than optimistic, right? All around.
This is such an important scenario to understand, right? So the pharmacy's closing down, patients are displaced. Now those patients are going somewhere else, and perhaps it's a scenario like you described, Sean. Maybe it's something that this isn't the place that they wanted to go, for any number of reasons, valid or not. But when they go in there, they could very easily find a pharmacy that is not well prepared to accept them. Now, I very much hope that's the exception and not the rule. But there can be a lot of challenge. There can be a lot of trauma. And if you go back and you look, at this definition of the law of compensation, the need for what you do, right? There's still a demand, but your ability to solve the problem. What if your ability to solve the problem decreases? What if you get worse at that through this time? Um, and now the difficulty to replace you, right? Those things are all at work. I'll tell you this story. The last place I was a pharmacy manager at was in Punxsutawney, Pennsylvania, the home of the groundhog, right? And pharmacy I was in, we were reasonably busy, at least by my standards. We were probably filling 2,400 prescriptions a week. But then after I left, over the course of the next 6 months, we acquired not one but two independent pharmacies. There was one that was literally our next door neighbor. Then there was one that was diagonal across the intersection from us. And on paper, that pharmacy should have gone from filling 2,400 prescriptions a week to 5,500 prescriptions a week. Now, you fast forward about 6 months past those acquisitions, you know what that pharmacy was filling? 2,400 prescriptions a week. Right. Now, how does that happen? It happens because the team did not improve, and this is individually, but it's also collectively as you look at your team, right? There was a demand for what you did, but your ability to solve the problem decreased. You were not able to handle that. You weren't able to manage that. You weren't able to set the appropriate expectations. And as long as there was other competitors in the marketplace, which in this instance there were, people will go looking elsewhere. And I think that's something that we need to be alert and aware to. And we also just need to have that heart of compassion towards the patients who are displaced through all of this and the hardship that they're going through. There's the hardship that happens on our end, but there's a hardship on the other side of the counter to what we do. So I just, that was something that I didn't realize it at the time. I heard the story, hey, Jess, your old store, this is what happened to it. And I rolled my eyes. I probably arrogantly thought, well, if I would have been there, we would have kept them all. That's not true. It's not true at all. But I would tell you that the solution to that was not, hey, can we get somebody credentialed to do diabetes or asthma or anti-coag or whatever, because that wasn't what the larger population needed. What the larger population needed was to be led well. They needed to be they needed to be cared for in such a way, and those are tools, those are skills, those are principles that you can learn and you can apply. Right, information plus application equals transformation, to be able to lead your team and your patients, to the successful outcomes that you're seeking.
That's great, Jess. Yeah, I don't have anything after that one, Dina. That was good.
Okay. So one of our missions here on this podcast is helping pharmacists improve some of those leadership skills that are going to make them harder to replace, more attractive in the job market, and with a sea of resumes there, and how can I differentiate myself? And I think we would all agree that we got very little to no leadership training in pharmacy school. And so I know there's many people out there like me that may find themselves in that thing, just wondering how the heck to, what do I do now and where do
you don't have to be that kind about it, Dina. There's times where it goes a couple steps beyond how the heck did this happen.
Yeah, true. I've been known to be one of those occasionally, but given that our mission here is to try to help pharmacists do that, Jesse, I think you have a new offering for some of our listeners that we would like to touch on. So why don't you tell us about that?
Yeah, it's an offering for all of our listeners when it comes down to it. I'm a firm believer that everything rises and falls on leadership, and I think that's something that is so sorely needed throughout our entire industry today. We need people to learn these skills, to practice these skills, to develop these skills in such a way that they can have such an impact in their communities, and then also be able to raise that up to have impact at larger levels, be that at at the local, the state, or the national level. I think there's such a huge opportunity for that. Leadership's is a big topic. It's a huge topic, and people often wonder where do I even start, and that's what we want to do. We want to give people the opportunity to start, and what I've come up with is a 4-part masterclass, 4 sessions. You'll get together with Sean and Dina and myself, and what we'll do is we're going to teach you 4 fundamental principles that can dramatically change the trajectory of your career. It can dramatically do it. Now, how can I make such a claim? I can make that claim because I've done this myself, right? I've seen the power of these principles, and I want to be able to share these principles with you. Now, maybe you find yourself today in a scenario where you don't know what the future holds for you. Like and that's an uneasy place to be in. And I want to encourage you, if you find yourself in that place, invest the time, because this is our free gift to you. I encourage you to invest the time to join us for 4 sessions. We'll teach you the principle. We'll give you the opportunity to ask some questions, and we will begin to equip you with those skills that will help you grow as a leader. Maybe you find yourself on the other end. Maybe you find yourself in a situation where you come into work one day and now you find out, hey, I'm gonna have more responsibility. There's going to be a bigger challenge. There's going to be a bigger mountain for me to climb, and I hope that you just naturally have the ability to do that. I very much hope that you have that ability to do that.
Jess, I'm going to stop you
Reality
right there for 1 second, because
you've been there.
I've been there
Yeah.
recently, right? I June of 23, I walked into a pharmacy. I've had all this experience behind me, and this was a new problem I had never had to solve before. This was the most toxic work culture I've ever been a part of, and I couldn't solve it. I wish I had met you, Jess, before I walked in here, honestly, because I solved it eventually, but my speed to market would have been much shorter if I had some of these skills. So I'm sorry. Go ahead, because
I appreciate those comments, because when you understand, and this has been the purpose of the last couple of podcasts, right? You need to understand that there's principles that govern this, right? You need to know the law, and then you need to obey the law, right? And there's parts of it that it's a cause and effect relationship. And where are you going to put yourself in this scale? Or on, are you going to live on the effect side of things? And that can be a highly frustrating place to be. It can be so frustrating to live life in the reactionary effect side of things, where this is what comes up, and this, and it's just a struggle. You want to be on the causative side of life as much as you possibly can. And if you can learn the principles that will allow you to be causative, right? That's where the word because comes from, right? It's a compound word, be cause, right? Be the cause. I want to encourage you to be causative in the environment where you find yourself. And if you equip yourself with these 4 principles, I'm going to tell you, you are going to get up in the morning confident for what is coming your way. Absolutely confident and competent in what you're looking to do. Now, I had a note that I wanted to share, and this is a question that I like to ask. I like to ask people, and it's why is anybody paid? Anybody on planet Earth, or I should say everybody on planet Earth, is paid for the exact same reason, and that's to solve a problem, right? So why are pharmacists paid? Pharmacists are paid to solve problems. Why is the kid running the fryolator at McDonald's paid? He solves a problem. right? Why is the gardener paid? Why is the garbage man paid? Fill in the blank. Why are any of these people paid? They're all paid because they solve problems. And when you understand that, and then you say, okay, how can I better solve problems? Like this is something that can unlock just a fantastic future for you. When you figure out what are those problems that you solve, because when it comes down to it, you and I, we can sit down with a blank piece of paper and we can make out a list of all the problems that we solve. If you're like me, you can also make a list of all the problems you create, right? My wife will, double check you on that. I say that for a little bit of humor here, but the fact of the matter is that there's all sorts of problems that you can solve, but they all don't have the same value. Right? All the problems that you solve do not have the same value. There are some that are so much more valuable. And again, if you look at it through the context of the law of compensation, you say, you know what, this is really where I need to live. Whenever I live at this space where I am solving these most challenging problems, where I'm really, really good at it, and there's not many people that can replace me. Now you have a formula that you can be so impactful in your community and beyond your community, across the entire profession, by getting involved with that. So I just want to make sure that I call that out, to our listeners, to our viewers, here as we wrap up today. The offer that I wanted to extend is we are doing a 4-part masterclass, and it's called the 4 Pillars of Leadership Growth. We want to give you these 4 pillars, these 4 principles that are really going to help you get a blueprint for how you move forward. And Sean, I think you've gone through a little bit of this with me before. Dean, I don't know that you've gone through much of this with me yet, but these principles are so transformational. And really all it's going to take is for you to dedicate a little bit of time. We'll do these sessions live, probably through a platform, a video platform like Zoom. If you're not able to join, don't worry about that. Sign up anyway. Get on the list. Join us when you can. You'll get the recordings if you miss. And based on the demand, we may actually have to have multiple sessions where we do this. So you may have other opportunities to join us. But you want to be involved with this. You want to at least expose yourself to these opportunities, to these principles, so that you can be causative for whatever your future, for whatever you want your future to hold.
Yeah, I love it. Sean, do you have anything to add to that?
No, that was great, Jess. Thank you for that. Check it out. You can sign up. We'll have links, wherever you're listening to this, there'll be links below to check out where to sign up for this masterclass. I'm excited about this one, Jess. There will also be information at rphli.com. If you always have any questions, just email us at info@rphli.com.
So I myself am also looking forward to this masterclass. I cannot wait for it. I'm excited about what's in store, just for me, for my own practice and improving my own leadership skills. So, and I hope that our listeners can kind of start ascertaining the fact that, Sean and Jesse, you and I, we're all at different levels in this leadership game too. Some of us have been doing it for a lot longer than others. And I just want to encourage our listeners that I am a baby when it comes to leadership. So I will be right there beside you in class, learning all of this stuff, and I can't wait. I know that it'll be a wonderful resource for anyone looking to improve their leadership skills, no matter if they've been doing it for 10 minutes, 10 years, couple of decades, whatever the case, we can always sharpen those up. As Sean said, we will have links down in the bottom, underneath, just whatever platform you're watching on. So be sure to check those out. We hope you'll sign up. And you cannot beat the introductory price of free. So that's also a very, very attractive piece of the puzzle there. So it's kind of our gift. So just be sure to check that out. Just an investment of time is all it will take, and the payoffs your return on investment will be huge. So be sure to do that. Also, while you're over at RPH Ally, you can also sign up for the other resources that are available there. So those are always good. Be sure to get on their mailing list. You can find Jesse, Sean, and myself over on LinkedIn. So we would love to connect with you there as well. Don't hesitate to reach out to us, message us. We'd love to chat. In the meantime, keep leading your teams with confidence from the boardroom to the break room, and we will see you next time on the Leadership Lab.